What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatolito Show. And you know how we do. We don't like to waste time, no sponsors, no BS. Let's jump right in. Barrios, Gervonta Davis, Atlanta, Georgia at the State Farm Arena. And it was a good fight. The co-main event was also pretty good. And so we'll start with that one. The co-main event was actually Erickson Lubin against Jason Rosario, who once tried to unify the titles against Jermell Charlo, came up short in his previous event, and he got stopped in the 8th round by Charlo. And here he tries to get back into his winning ways and faces a tough task in Erickson Lubin, comes up short, really short at that, as Erickson Lubin stops him in the 6th round, drops him twice, and that's all she wrote. Erickson Lubin looked good. He takes a small alphabet title, a small version of the WBC title. I believe it was the silver title for the 154-pound division. Nonetheless, Erickson Lubin's climbing back up. Jason Rosario takes a step back in his career, and Erickson Lubin's going to be lining himself up, which is also what Jarrett Hurd tried to do recently on the undercard of the Mayweather-Paul event out in Florida, trying to get himself back into a big fight with the winner of the upcoming fight of Castaño and Jermell Charlo. Now, Erickson Lubin's lining up right there, so now he just took a step ahead of Jarrett Hurd. Lubin looked good, stops Jason Rosario. Jason Rosario's no joke. He's a solid fighter. He's a good fighter, and came up short. Back-to-back losses for him. He was just outpunched, outclassed, and Lubin, just the true professional that he is. I mean, what a solid career that Erickson Lubin has had, and good for him. Good co-main event. The card was okay. The lead-up card was entertaining at that. Good boxing. I love solid boxing. I could always do away with the concerts and the singing and the entertainment in between. Those events, when you're going to tune into one of those Triller events, you know what you're in for now. Now we know what to expect, and it is what it is, right? And you just got to do the time to be able to make it to see the fight that you're tuning in to see, right? Whether it's the main event or the co-main or one of the other ones. It is what it is. But these traditional boxing cards are what we boxing fans love. Even MMA fans, right? MMA fans love MMA cards. MMA fight after MMA fight, whether you get 8 fights or 10 fights, 12 fights lined up. If you're watching there live, you're watching and tuning into all of the cards, or you show up late, but you still get to catch at least 4, 5, 6 of them. But you know what you're showing up. You're not showing up for an event. You're not showing up for a concert mixed in with fights, mixed in with whatever. So at that, it was an entertaining card. It had decent fights, up-and-coming prospects, but the co-main event was the one that stole the show for me. And then Gervonta Davis and Mario Barrios, the writing was on the wall. If you didn't see that Davis was going to win this fight, then you bought into the hype. You bought into the Showtime lead-in episodes, and they did the Sunday episodes leading up to the fight, just like they did with the Mayweather-Paul. And they hype you up. I mean, there's no denying that those shows hype you up, and you start seeing their training and how they're doing. But I don't know. If you didn't feel it, I felt it from the start that Gervonta Davis was going to go through. Mario Barrios. Barrios is a good fighter, and let's just call it like it is. Mario Barrios is a good fighter. Gervonta Davis, a couple fights ago, stepped up a couple notches, especially after the Leo Santa Cruz fight, stepped up a couple notches and proved to be moving up from a good status fighter to a great status fighter. I really believe that Gervonta Davis is a great fighter, but don't get that mixed up. He's not an elite level fighter, but he is a great fighter. And when you have a great fighter fighting a good fighter, you're going to get what you got. Now, there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives that came with it. Let's look at the positives. The positives of the fight, the way that the fight played out. Barrios fighting tall. He was a taller fighter. When you saw this weigh in and you saw their face off, Barrios was just towering over Gervonta Davis, similar to the other fight that took place that night between Nakatani and Lomachenko, where Nakatani was just towering over Lomachenko. Barrios, the taller fighter, longer reach, fought tall, and started the fight that way. There wasn't much action for the first 4 rounds. It looked like Barrios was walking away with those rounds. Then you ended up getting the scorecards, and it looked like the judges were automatically giving rounds to Gervonta Davis for the lack of action. There wasn't much action going on. It looked like Barrios was probably the one that was putting out a little bit more effort and a little bit better output in those first 4 rounds. And therefore, it was okay if he would have taken those rounds. The 5th round is where everything mixed up. The 5th round, they exchanged several times, and they met. Gervonta Davis took the risk, finally ended up deciding to go in there to see what the power was like, and he ended up coming out on top. He ended up hurting Barrios, even though it wasn't anything noticeable. It was noticeable by the time the 6th round started. When the 6th round got underway, you saw Barrios step out away from the corner and into the fight, lowering his head a lot more, dropping his shoulders, and starting to fight lower rather than the taller fighter he was fighting down towards Gervonta's height, which led me to believe that he got damaged. His body got hurt during those exchanges, and Gervonta started seeing that he could actually infiltrate in that height and in those gaps. The 7th round was entertaining. The 8th round is where everything changed, and that's what started leading it. That 5th round exchange between the 2 fighters is where you saw Gervonta Davis's confidence get bigger, but was still a little bit hesitant because Barrios does possess some power, but not enough output. By the 8th round, Gervonta Davis lunges forward with an overhand right, catches Barrios right on the temple, drops him. Barrios gets up, answers the count. Gervonta Davis lunges forward, covers ground quickly, starts getting on his man, and drops Barrios again, this time by way of a left hand, of a left punch. Barrios goes down again. He survives that count, finishes the round, composes himself throughout the 9th, throughout the 10th, but you just felt the momentum had shifted, and Barrios was now the defensive, which is not how the fight started. He was hesitant, but so was Davis. But Barrios was pushing forward. Even then, the 9th and the 10th round, Barrios would try to create some action and generate his flow and get his rhythm back, but Davis was just countering him, and you could tell that Barrios was hesitant now to get caught with another punch, especially the ones that were hurting him to the body. By the 11th round, they end up mixing it up, and during one of the exchanges, as they get close to the corner, Davis ends up getting the best of him. Barrios ends up going high with his attack, headhunting with his combination. Davis ends up landing that monstrous hook to the body and bends over Barrios. Barrios just drops to the knee in somewhat of a delayed reaction, but it hurt and he dropped. Now credit to Barrios where he didn't cave into any of these knockdowns. He got up. This is just shy of the 2-minute mark into the 11th round. He answers the count once again, circles the ring a little bit, and within 15 seconds at that, Davis covers ground, unleashes his hands, lets him go, and the referee steps in and waves the fight off, saving Barrios from possibly getting hurt or another knockdown or knockout at that. Gervonta Davis, the positives that I took from it was how calculated he was. This is the difference in the approach versus his last fight against Leo Santa Cruz and this one with Mario Barrios, how different these 2 fighters are. Not only were they 10 pounds apart, but Leo Santa Cruz, the style of fight that he has is punches and bunches. He attacks, he goes forward, he presses the action, and he was landing. So the hesitation that Gervonta Davis showed versus Leo Santa Cruz was it was a hesitation and a frustration. that he didn't show with Barrios because the output wasn't there on behalf of Barrios. He was landing. He connected several strong punches that got the crowd to ooh and ah when he landed these punches and got a reaction out of the commentators, but it wasn't enough. He didn't follow through on that. So Barrios, the output was very minimal, whereas Leo Santa Cruz pressed the action and pushed forward against Gervonta Davis, which we saw a different performance from Gervonta Davis. He almost got forced and was getting baited in to defend himself, whereas this one, he was very calculated, very measured, and that was pretty refreshing to see because he fought in a different style. He didn't buy into the hesitation and convert it into frustration. He let those rounds go. He felt the power, he waited for the opportunity, and by the 5th round is when he decided to take the risk and see if Barrios has something for him. He did. Barrios possesses power. He's got good pop behind his hands, but not enough. Not enough as deemed by Gervonta Davis. Not enough that was going to keep him outside of fighting the inside the pocket and attacking, pressing, taking the action right back to Barrios. So that was impressive on Gervonta Davis, how calculated he was the first half of the fight. Also, taking the risk. This is what great fighters do. This is the difference between a great fighter and a good fighter. That when fighters are up and coming, they fail to recognize certain things, certain rhythms, certain flows of the fight, certain scenarios when they present themselves during the fight where they should be able to capitalize, and they don't recognize it too late. I mentioned this a couple episodes back when Haney fought Linares. He wasn't failing to recognize these spots. Charlo and Macia, same thing. It was kudos to Charlo because he wasn't failing. He didn't fail as far as recognizing the openings and the moments when he had his opponent hurt. Same thing with Haney. He didn't hesitate. His reaction time was very good. His instincts were very good. So whenever they would see an opening, they would take it. They recognized it and they would take it. It wasn't that they recognized it too late and missed the opportunity. Gervonta Davis did that. He recognized it. He took the risk by being willing to get hurt a little bit, which is the gambit. He took the gambit and came out successful. Figured out that he was going to be okay. And ended up instilling a little bit of fear, a little bit of hesitancy that we saw on behalf of Barrios because Gervonta Davis was willing to stand in the pocket and bang and trade whenever they had these exchanges. So that was the impressive part about Gervonta Davis. Of course, the knockdowns, the power, how his power transitions very well, seamlessly between the 130, 135, and the 140-pound divisions. Seamlessly. That was impressive. What I didn't like about it is everything that followed after the fact. And it wasn't anything that Gervonta Davis did. What I like about Davis is how humble he is during the interviews, how humble he is and how quick he is to praise his opponents, how quick he is to acknowledge. And he's so humble. He's very comfortable in his skin. He's so humble. There was even a portion where somebody presented a video of Mike Tyson speaking about Gervonta Davis, claiming that in his mind or his opinion, Gervonta Davis is the best fighter out there at the moment right now, or the most complete fighter. And Gervonta Davis was very humble listening to something like that. And I guess anybody would if it comes from Mike Tyson. But there's no cockiness. There's no brashiness. He has that aura about him, but his mouth doesn't sell that. His mouth doesn't carry, that doesn't allow him to carry himself that way. He doesn't present himself that way. He's very humble, very soft-spoken, speaks very well, very soft, very kind towards his opponents, and very gracious. Whether he wins in emphatic fashion or if it's a decision when he's been very humble. We've seen it time and again, and that was very refreshing. So those are all the positives that I came away from. The negatives was, and what I mean by what came after was we start seeing the commentary, we start seeing the claims. Leonard Ellerby was one of them who's pushing his career right now alongside Mayweather, and he was always there by Mayweather's side during Floyd's career. The fact that he's a bigger draw than Josh Taylor, the fact that he's the man to beat at 140, that he's the man to beat in any of the divisions that he's campaigning at right now. And those claims, I get it. They're promotional, they're selling, they're baiting, they're meant to get under people's skin, and they manage to do that to me. But the fandom that comes after saying how Josh Taylor didn't even have any as big a viewing or as big of an attendance as Gervonta Davis did. Well, just to break that down, when Josh Taylor's fight happened, everything was still pretty much shut down in Vegas. And across the country, there was only a few states that were starting to open up. I actually tried to attend and be part of the press at the Virgin Hotels for the Taylor Ramirez fight, and got shut down because of the COVID restrictions. They were limited to a certain capacity, and they were not opening it up to a vast amount of media. So me being obviously a smaller platform, I didn't get the opportunity, but I figured that was one that I wanted to be live at and cover it live from there, from Las Vegas. So those are the comparisons. Now, can I agree with that? Sure, I could agree with it. Gervonta Davis has a bigger following in the United States than Josh Taylor. He's better known than Josh Taylor because he's alongside Mayweather. He's with the money team. He's on Showtime, whereas Josh Taylor was on ESPN. Even though it's a big sports channel, the coverage is only limited as it leads into the fight. And other than that, his following is outside of the U.S. So can I agree with that comment? Sure. If they were to say Gervonta Davis has a bigger following than Josh Taylor in the United States, and Taylor outside of the United States has a massive following. Let's just put this into perspective. If these two were to meet, Davis, who has the regular version of the WBA title now in the 140-pound division, and they're saying that he's the man to beat at 140, we just had the fight between Ramirez and Taylor, which decided who the man was at 140. All titles were on the line. So these claims that Davis is the man to beat at 140 is ridiculous to me. But whatever. Let's put this to the test. If these two were to meet, let's say at the Cowboy Stadium, which has a capacity of approximately 100,000 fans, plus, give or take, plus or minus, right? Give or take. What percentage would attend? What percentage of each of the fighters a fan base would attend? For Gervonta Davis, I probably would say it would be 60-40 for Davis. If we get to a 70-30 split, that 70% of the fans would be there for Davis and 30 for Taylor, I could also agree with that, but it'd be pushing it. I think it'd be more like 60-40. Why do I say that? History has proven that the European fans, especially the UK fans, they're rabid fans, and they will fly and they will travel and they will cross that sea to come watch their fighter and support their fighter, and they show up in droves. 60-40 would be realistic to me. 70-30, I could go with that. If we were to switch this scenario over towards the Wembley Stadium, which houses a similar or has the capacity to sit a similar amount of fans. We saw with Joshua Klitschko. It's pretty much a given that it's going to be about 80-20 for Taylor. Maybe even 90-10 for Taylor. If we went as low as a 70-30, you're telling me that 30% of the crowd, at the minimum 30,000 people, because it would be a sellout. No doubt about it. Especially with Mayweather and Leonard Ellerbe promoting it, Al Heyman, Showtime promoting it. It would be a sellout. They would do their job. They know how to promote. They know how to market. But the amount of people where his biggest fan base is based out of Baltimore, Atlanta, Cleveland, Chicago, New York, big fan base in Texas, big fan base in California, Northern California at that. I doubt that 30,000 people, 40,000 people would make the trip to attend this event. A huge portion would. But I don't think 40,000 people would attend and make the trip for a Davis fight overseas. It's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Just based on what we've seen. I'm not hating on Davis. I love Gervonta Davis. The track, what I don't like is the track that they're putting him on, this Mayweather path to stardom. And if it's a money-making type of career, then so be it. But I see it already. With Mario Barrios, his next one I would possibly see with this path, the way that the patterns play now, we could possibly see him go back to 130 and maybe face Italian fighter Michael Magnesi, who has an IBO championship. He goes to 135 and maybe takes a money fight with Ryan Garcia. That would be interesting, I guess, just because of the hype. But I think that's an easy fight for Gervonta Davis. I really think Gervonta Davis will smoke Ryan Garcia. No title there. Maybe he goes for one of the interim titles. But then maybe he goes to 130 and fights Roger Gutierrez. That would be a good fight. But he's not fighting the Burchelts at 130. He's not fighting the Valdezes. He's definitely not going to fight Shakur Stevenson. And I don't even think Shakur Stevenson has much of a chance with Gervonta yet. Shakur Stevenson to me is next level. But he's not there yet. So I don't even think he would be willing to take on those names. There's somebody that I know would give Gervonta Davis trouble at 130. A couple fighters at that. Gary Russell Jr., O'Shaquie Foster, Miguel Burchelt. At 135, Lomachenko, and any of the other big names. Even Ryan Garcia, I think, will be... There's something about Ryan Garcia and why he keeps calling out Gervonta Davis. And everybody seems to call out Gervonta Davis because they're seeing him as a money fight, and they also see him as a threat because he's aligned with Mayweather. He does have power. His power carries well from division to division. And there's something about Gervonta Davis that they haven't figured out. He looks like an easy puzzle to solve, but he keeps succeeding. He's 25-0 now, and the power must be unreal because he keeps doing it to these fighters. We saw what happened to Leo Santa Cruz. We saw what happened now to Barrios. Yuri Ortiz, he's a tough fight for anybody. He's just a scramble of a fighter, even at this late stage in his career. But Gary Russell has been calling for that fight, and I think he would give him headaches at 130. I think Miguel Burchelt, whether he faces him at 130, I think he's looking to campaign at 135, possibly. Jojo Diaz would be another one that I think would be rough for him at 130. At 135, I think Fortuna would be rough for Gervonta Davis. That style of fight that he has, to me, Fortuna is like a mix of Guillermo Rigondeaux and Yuri Ortiz Gamboa. He's like a mixture of those two fighters. He's very elusive. And then you got your Haney's. I think Haney's top, one of the top dogs. Teofimo Lopez We'll see how he comes out of the Kambosos fight. We don't know how he's doing with the COVID thing. But if he fights Kambosos, a lot of people are looking past Kambosos because they don't recognize the name. But I really feel like he's going to be a tougher test for Lopez than people give him credit for. Even Nakatani, I think, would give trouble to Gervonta Davis. The height, the awkwardness, the reach. Would he be able to do what Lomachenko did to him? We'll talk about that fight next. Those are the negatives that I saw come out of this fight. It's a false narrative that comes out of that fight. And if it's going to happen to be, and what I mean by the Mayweather stardom type plan is that eventually we're going to start hearing the same narrative. Look how many champions I beat. Look how many titles I've taken. Look, and I'm still undefeated. Look at this. Look at that. And he leaves you craving for those big name fights when they're supposed to happen. You can't deny that Mayweather is an all-time great. The two careers of Mayweather, from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather, you can't deny that he's a legend. He was amazing at what he did. And when you look at his resume, all those names on there were in a span of time within a few years. Your De La Hoya, Hatton, Mosley, Pacquiao several years after, Canelo as an up-and-comer, Cotto. But then you got Robert Garcia, right? Who was a decent fighter in his day, the trainer, Robert Garcia. You got Jesus Chavez. You got Robert Guerrero's down the stretch, Victor Ortiz, Andre Berto. Maldana, who muddied the waters with them. But he was definitely not at that level. This is the difference between a great fighter and Mayweather being at the elite level versus a good fighter. And some of these good fighters were knocking on the door of greatness, but were still good. Between them, they would have good fights. Robert Guerrero, Andre Berto. Victor Ortiz, Andre Berto. Maldana, Victor Ortiz. These fighters would have amazing fights between one another, but they were the same level fighters. And that's what I fear for Gervonta Davis. Those are the negatives that I took away from this because it's a false narrative. So now he has 3 WBA titles, one in the 130, which he is the super champion at 130 for the WBA. And then he's got the 2 regular version titles at 135 and at 140. The man at 140, don't get it mistaken. The man at 140 is Josh Taylor. If he's going to cement himself at 140, we need to see Davis take on Jose Ramirez, who just surrendered his titles to Josh Taylor. We need to see him against Regis Prograis, Jose Cepeda, Ivan Baranchyk, Mikey Garcia. If he's going to be the man, at the moment, it's Teofimo Lopez, but he hasn't defended that title. He took it. He hasn't defended it. We already saw the man that he took it from. He was in action on this very same night. Teofimo got sick. It's unfortunate. The card's delayed. Should he be successful against Kambosos, then the takeover is definitely for real. To me, the takeover was for real. He talked. He got the fight. He won. Now he needs to keep that status. And this would be the fight that would cement that status for him. If he loses all those titles in his next outing against Lomachenko, should he be successful against Kambosos and he takes the rematch with Lomachenko or agrees to the rematch with Lomachenko, then that's the way that the cookie crumbled. But he needs to defend those titles. Devin Haney, Fortuna, Linares, Lomachenko, Lopez, Ryan Garcia. 135. 130. Let's get that fight with Gary Russell. Let's get the fight with O'Shaquie Foster. Let's get Miguel Burchelt in there. Leave Shakur Stevenson alone. Get Lamont Roach. Oscar Valdez. Even Jamel Herring. Jamel Herring seems to be, they're looking at Jamel Herring at the moment as if he's the weaker of the champions at 130. Don't forget Jojo Diaz, Tevin Farmer, Shakhtar Rakimov, who just gave a hell of a fight to Jojo Diaz, but Jojo Diaz lost his title on the scale. The same title that he took from Tevin Farmer. Jojo Diaz is still a live dog, and a very good fighter at that. Had a draw with Rakimov. That should tell you the level of opposition that Rakimov possesses and brings to the table. And a little bit of judges' influence at that, right? Because I didn't think that was a draw, but it was a very rough fight to watch, and I could definitely imagine if it was hard to watch, very interruptive type fight, it was hard for the judges to score as well. So it is what it is. O'Shaquie Foster is the one that a lot of people don't hear about. Asinga Fuzila is out there as well, but I think those guys, now we're getting into the B level right now, and I think those guys are going to be really good tests for Shakur Stevenson as he continues to mold himself into the fighter and the standard that he has the potential to reach. Those are the scenarios that came into my head after this fight. As far as the fight goes with him and Barrios, great performance. Great performance. I like how calculated he was, how measured, how composed, took his time, found his openings, recognized the openings, and adapted the entire way. Recognized his opponent's reactions, expressions, covered ground, and let his hands go. That was the beautiful thing about the fight between Davis and Barrios. Barrios will be back, and he'll have good fights because he's a good fighter. He'll have blood fests because he's a good fighter, and he's a tough test for anybody. But he fights for the challenge. He doesn't fight above his opposition, he fights down to the opposition. And that was evident today. And if you look at his previous fights, that was evident in those fights. When they continue to just beat on him, he wants to beat you back. When it's an inside fight, he wants to fight back. Make it a phone booth type of fight. But when it dictates for him to take control of the fight, he failed to do it. He had the advantages. He had the approach. He had the game plan. He had the corner. But that was the difference in how it played out this past Saturday. So, good showing by Erickson Lubin. Great treat to the people in Atlanta. It was awesome to see crowds. Now I'm loving it. Crowds. We're getting attendance back, and it's getting better and better and better as we continue to improve. and the communities continue to improve and get a hand on this pandemic, we get to go out and enjoy live sports, and there's nothing like watching a live boxing match. So I'll leave you guys with that. I don't want to make this too long of an episode, so I'm going to cut it off. And instead of doing a 2-parter, I'll just do a separate episode, and we'll talk about Lomachenko and Nakatani, because that was a hell of a fight as well. So I'll see you guys on the next episode, and let's talk Loma on the next one. For this one, congratulations, Tank Davis, who gets another title in his third division, and now holds a strap in the 130 and the 135 and the 140-pound divisions, and remains undefeated. 25-0, impressive record to date, and an impressive career so far. Congratulations, Gervonta Davis, Baltimore, the people of Atlanta who were there live witnessing this, and thank you guys again for tuning in. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.